We are living in an artificially induced state of consciousness that resembles sleep. The poor and the underclass are growing. Racial justice and human rights are non-existent. We have been lulled into a trance. They have made us indifferent to ourselves, to others. We are focused only on our own gain. That is their primary method of survival. Keep us asleep, keep us selfish, keep us sedated.
You're listening to Toward Anarchy on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Here's your host, Michael Storm.
That's not going to work real well. I can't believe I just sat down without my drink. Here I am thinking, is the New World Order finally grasping control of everything and moving us towards this great reset, beginning with this new normal that's not so new and is anything but normal, at least to what I would call normal. And how am I going to wash it all down without my drink? I'll have to jump up and grab it at the break. It wasn't cold enough yet, so I stuck it in the freezer. I really like it to be really, really cold. Thank you for joining me. It's another episode of Toward Anarchy. I am your host, Michael Storm, and I'm here live, Republic Broadcasting Network. Amazing time in the world. Just here talking about me, doing my thing, talking about this anarchy stuff. And boy, is there something to talk about today. We get the Whitmer kidnapping plot, and that guy's an anarchist. And boy, I wish I could say that there's no way this guy could be an anarchist, but there's nothing about being an anarchist that says that you can't do what they were planning to do, I guess. I mean, there's nothing in that definition that really says that. When you're, I guess, if you feel violated by somebody, I tend to think of it not in those amorphous terms like that. It gets so muddy when you start talking about the intent of politicians versus the actions of the people that they hire to do the things they do. You know what I mean? I always want to try to make this separation. I want you to understand that when I talk about these things, I'm talking about the ideas. I'm not talking about individuals. Individuals are different. I'm all for the individual and them being who they can be. What I'm not for is the unaccountable, the theft, the justification of violation of simple principles of understanding of our own reality, things that a child understands. This is one of the things that I just still don't get, that where we lose this from being children and from I was told this. I don't see anybody out there. Maybe they are. Maybe all these crazy short-haired, I don't want to typify these beings, whatever. I don't even want to call them people. I don't want to insult them by giving them gender or saying they're human or anything like this, because they're so weird and you can offend them in so many ways. Maybe they really are telling their children that the world is how do they have children? I don't know. Jeez, they're so confused, and they confuse me. So I guess they're telling their adopted children that the world is theirs and that the world owes them something, and that it's okay to take other people's stuff. It's okay to. Did we lose a value in there somewhere? Is it because of the loss of value in the Christian teachings? Is that a possibility of it? That was such a basic tenet of those teachings, right? You be honest. You don't steal from other people, and if you're honest about the behavior and the actions of certain people and their job and what they do, it's about theft and stealing from other people, and so maybe you would understand it a little. I don't know if they. I was raised in the Christian tradition, so I have those values. of course, I'm older and I see that those values aren't exclusive to Christianity, but if there's not anybody else out there putting those values forth as being important, that might be a bad thing, because there's nothing wrong with those values. I don't know. I'm not even sure what I wrote down this Great Reset thing. That's a problem. I wrote this Great Reset thing down because it's all of a sudden people are talking about it, and I just don't know. When I asked that question, I asked it as a joke, jokingly, because I just don't know. I don't know if the New World Order is there seems to be nothing new about it. First of all, this has been going on for so long. The New World Order is the order that we are in now. Everything's pushing in that direction. There's nothing, it's even flowing in that direction. There's only just a few of us out here that are even swimming against the current. Even those people who say that they're against some of these things, that all you do is tax them just a little bit on their principles, and you suddenly realize that they have no principles, that they only think about these things in terms of themselves, and that's the failure of our organization as a nation. Those documents, these ideas that were handed down, that's the failure of them right there, is that we took for granted, I guess, that these things were supposed to protect us and offer us some real protection against tyranny and against evil people, and we're convinced that the evil people were our neighbors. Well, they are, but now the evil is that they just vote and they just steal your wealth, and there's this group of people out there. Everybody calls them the elite. They're not elite. They're the political class. They're leeches. They'd be social pariahs. They'd be people that we would never associate with. Many of them megalomaniacal, narcissistic, completely insane. You would have to be to even want to try to manage the macro. The micro is hard enough. Isn't managing your own life just enough? Do you really want to try to manage everybody else's life? And that's the best you can ask of any of these busybodies that they are there to manage. We find out now, again, we're so far into this thing, with so many years down the road, that there's anybody who enters it, it's hard to think that if they are anything but openly Ron Polish, I guess, I don't know, the super uber libertarian, that they're there for the purpose of lining their pockets, and because there's no real change, right? We have these protesters, and we have people on the streets in America like never before. Months now that's been going on, and there doesn't seem to necessarily be any end to it this time, because they're not. That's the problem, right? They're not asking for anything different. Both sides want the same thing. They just want it for different reasons. They don't care about the theft. The question becomes, I need to get my drink really badly. I'm feeling this right now. There's so much to talk about, and there's so much of this to get into, and these are the things that are bouncing around in my brain all the time. But let me do the basics, and then I'll try to come back to this. I wrote down my little notes so I can come back to it. I mentioned being on the streets, and there's some things about this and this perception of what's going on. And I'll come right back to that. But in the meantime, if you want to follow along with what I have going on today, go to towardanarchy.com. You're looking for October 11th. If you have to go through the archive, just click archive, click 2020 archive. October should be right there. October 11th. You'll see that my guest today is Chuk Lee. If you remember Chuck, I met him not too long ago, digital friend, and then brought him on the show to talk tech, and really found him very interesting, and found that we have a similar approach to managing our technology and our views on what technology, but as well as these political ideas. He's started himself a TikTok page. I even started a TikTok page. I haven't used it yet or anything, but just again, it's another one of these ways to just reach out to people. It's just one more sort of popular thing to try and take advantage of to boost the show and boost the position of anarchy, especially after events. Every time you turn around, somebody tries to attribute or some anarchist, somebody who claims to be an anarchist, does something stupid, and I've made it clear many times before that anarchy is not. It doesn't dictate the intelligence of a person. It doesn't prove they have an understanding of economics or that they are socially good. What defines that? Or normal? Just they lack a lot of definition if all they do is call themselves an anarchist. Right? Makes sense. Well, Chuk Lee's one of those people. He's more nuanced than that. The sound chamber question comes up today. It always does, but because I tell again and again that I don't have any problem with this, that I don't really believe that there's such a thing as the echo chamber, the sound chamber. I had a meeting with the committee in the chamber, and we came to an agreement that there's nothing wrong with it, that you should, that we're, as people, we're more nuanced than that. So some of us are nothing more than the letter after the name. I guess, sad as it is, there really are people that all they identify with is political party in one fashion or another. But I want to surround myself with like-minded people, right? Trusted people, reasonable people, people who are actually striving for liberty. I don't see any reason to subject myself to anything less any more than I have to, because if I want a face full of statism, if I want a face full of socialism, if I want just this, I'll just stick my head out the door. I poke my head out my door, and I'm just smacked in the face with it. It's all around me. It's in the mowed lawns of all of my neighbors. That's statism to me. I just see it right there, because the only reason I mow my own lawn, the only reason I have a lawn is because I didn't put it there, and I have a choice. And that's even one of these things you see. You can't plant certain trees, and you have to plant them in a certain space, if they're not already old and grandfathered in since they passed the last laws. And then it's just, I watched this happen in the town that I grew up in. I watched it over the years go from you planted a garden, you did whatever you wanted with your yards, to all of a sudden they literally would come in and tell you exactly what plants you can plant, where you can plant them, how far apart they had to be, and it was all in law. It was, if you did anything outside of it, it's all part of the project for a new American century. All of what's it? They recently changed it. It was the it was supposed to be for the 21st century, but now it's, they always keep pushing the thing back. I just don't. Everything's a code word now. Everything's a buzzword, and I'm sorry if I forget all of the cute little phrases and all the enemies that I'm supposed to have this week, and that brings me back to the anarchy. And the anarchist thing, the kidnapping plot against Wilmer. Okay, let's set aside the fact that it's probably just this. It's an enhanced FBI thing, right? Aren't all of these things anymore? Isn't the FBI just basically responsible for 80 or 90% of the things that they stop, the potential crimes that they stop? That there's actually some FBI agent at the middle of it, at the heart of it somewhere, sort of churning things and pushing buttons. I will find out, I guess, if this is another one of those. But there's these six guys, I guess, and there's one in particular, because the narrative is, of course, that this is a left-wing governor, and that she is a threat to the right. And so immediately upon this plot coming out, it was attributed as a right-wing plot. And then, of course, there's at least one person in there that has there's some video and some statements about him not liking Trump, and that Trump is a tyrant, and that there's an anarchy flag in the background. And just who knows if any of this means anything, if any of it's real. And that's why it's not about what people claim they are. It's what they do. It's who they are as a principled individual. And it brings this thing back full circle every time, because that's all I see across the board every time I turn around. It's good for the goose, but it's not good enough for the gander. And I'm not just talking about male, female. I'm not just talking about he, she, and her, sklur, and I'm not that. I mean just individuals who run around saying that they support certain ideas, that they demand that they be head of their own economy, but that I can't be head of my own economy, that they demand that they have rights over their property and can do anything they want with. But when I'm trying to when I want to recognize my rights, I want to exercise my rights on my property, there's a problem. They have to they turn to government, they turn to authority, they turn to anything but their own principle that they supposedly hold. And I'm just tired of it. I'm so sick of it. It seems to me that it's just not that hard to be a principled individual in life. I wish I knew maybe some other words to use. It moral, maybe that's one that's good, but I like the principle word better. Principled individual. It's something that I don't know. I've jumped on here recently. I just like it. Like, you turn and look at your principles when you say you are something, and tell me if who you are and your actions actually meet those things that you say. Because everybody does it. Everybody says things in the moment, but I'm not talking about simple basic gaffes of understanding. I'm talking about hardcore built-in prejudices against other people being themselves. Whether it's them liking football and wanting to watch football, or Dancing with the Stars, or whatever it is that they're into and they want to do, to the political party that they choose, to the things that the individuals, the relationships that they have. Why let so much and so many people and so many things that you have disdain for or dislike for occupy so much space in your mind? Why? And then just constantly just spit it out in a venomous way all day long, every single day, just spitting it out at anybody who will listen. And I'm not to say that it's never to say that I'm perfect in these things, because I'm not. I make mistakes when I'm communicating with people and I'm trying to get my ideas out, but not principal mistakes. Not in that sense. I let my temper get the best of me sometimes, and so I don't let people make mistakes when they converse with me. Once you cross a certain line with me, I'm done with you. I don't want to communicate with you anymore. You've proven to me that I can't communicate with you reasonably, and so I let my emotion get away with me in that. But you're still not going to see me violate any principle where I stand in your a place and in your shoes where I wouldn't allow you to speak. I just will walk away. You can keep talking. I'm just not listening anymore. You can have the views you want to have. You get to do all those things and say all those things and be all those things, as long as you do it voluntarily, as long as I don't have to fight to try to opt myself out of the system somehow, or find some way to protect myself from the things that you're involving yourself in. I don't want to have to do that. It's, again, my own existence is enough. I don't need everybody else's trouble too. And I think so many times we voluntarily take that on by these weird identities, these things that we associate ourselves with. And whether it's a name like Anarchy, or whether it's a political party, or anything along those lines, we invest too much in it, whether just entertainment, any of these things, just investing way too much in these things that are unimportant, that they feel so important because they're big. They're big. But they're not that big when it comes down to you and your reality and your existence and everything that we do just every day. And it's such a burden. And I wish I knew I wish I knew ways for people to get rid of it, because this thing out here that people are exercising now, particularly social media and the idea of being heard on every little subject that comes down the road, it's not working. People already didn't communicate. They'll blame it on the social media. They'll blame it on the tools. But you know me, I don't do that. We don't do tool blaming here. Tools are tools. You use them, they're used for either good or bad. And they'll blame it on the tools. But the fact is that they already didn't know how to communicate. There was already an inability for these individuals to communicate well, to communicate in such a way as to not incite anger out of the individual. If the language that you use makes people angry, yeah, it may be that they should be angry and maybe that they should be thinking. But if it comes back at you, maybe you need to change the things, the way you're saying them. Maybe it's not the things. I know for a fact that it can be the way you say it and not the things that you say. And so it doesn't help with this new communication technique here, with the poor communications that we already have, the political divisions, the fact that you can create an echo chamber, and that for people who aren't well-reasoned and well-thought and understand, it can live outside of their own heads. This is a problem with the echo chamber, right, is for the people who live in their own heads, who live in their own reality, who think that they create reality with their thoughts and their actions, and believe that that's all reality, not that that's just a part of reality. And they when they live inside their head, they get feedback. Everything is negative. Everything's broken already. And so the feedback that they get and from the people that they surround themselves with is broken already. It's not the tool. It's not the venue. It's the people. And so I always want you to understand that it's not about individual people. Individual people are too nuanced and too varied. You have to judge each person by themselves and the things that they say and they do. That's all you can do. The party affiliation, the groups, those things are all only just a microcosm of an individual and who they can be and the things that they're thinking, and it just doesn't say everything. So when you see the anarchist flag in the background, or when you say that when the news is saying that the anarchist did this and the anarchist did that, well, maybe they did, but it wasn't this anarchist. It wasn't my anarchist friends. This wasn't anybody that I know. Not that I know everybody, but it's not like we're a large group, that there are a whole bunch of us running around. Not in the sense that there's always fringe, right? There's always going to be the extremes when you take and compare any two different things that call themselves the same, whether it be human or anarchist or Republican or just any other word that might describe just a tiny facet of them. That's the problem. It only describes that one little thing. It's so much more important to go ahead and take every single one of these things that you see. If you have to invest any time in any of this stuff at all, separate the individuals from their ideas and try to change the ideas. Don't try to change the people. Yeah, I don't think you can change the people. It's not like that. If somebody is inherently afraid of like drowning, like I've all these years later, many years later, after having experiences where I didn't fare well in water, I don't like water. I still have a aquaphobia of some sort. I don't want any water up near my neck or my head or my mouth or my face. But I can still go swimming and things like that. But that innate fear, that core fear, still is there, and so I don't want to be around it ever. But I'm just a little bit stronger at it. You see what I'm saying? So it's not changed. It's fundamental to me. I still am afraid of it, but I'm less afraid of it. I'm less afraid of it every day, if you were. I guess. I don't know. I don't go swimming every day, so I guess I can't really say that. But every time I go swimming or every time I put myself in a situation where there's a large body of water and I'm not afraid to go into it and be in it and try to do the fun things like ride the skis. And I've done all that. I've gone deep sea fishing and since the time that I almost drowned as a child. And it's still there. It's still there. It is heights too. Heights, but I'll still go. And agoraphobia. I guess we're all afraid of something, a little bit of everything. I don't like to be in tight, confined spaces. Who the hell does? Why would you? I guess it's admitting those kind of things, admitting those weaknesses. Ooh, I guess that's the thing that you're not supposed to do as a man. TowardAnarchy.com, October 11th is what you're looking for. Chuk Lee will join me here in just a few minutes. We're talking about off-the-grid solar power this time. We'll talk about some tech and things like that. And I shared the links to Skunkerific Repair, his computer sales, repairs, and upgrades, both on Facebook as well as their website. And I also shared a couple of links that we'll talk about in the last half of the show, the 100 best rock albums of all time. I didn't look at the list yet. I thought we'd look at it together and we'd just pick a few of them, maybe the top 10 or something, and see what we found up there. And then I thought this was important. This was nice and short, and it just introduces some people to the concept, because I don't think a lot of people know it, and that's the concept of positive and negative liberty, or positive and negative rights. So there's two concepts of liberty and rights, and they're positive and negative, and one is granted to you and one is inherent, and this is just a primer. I thought it was a neat touch. I think one of the listeners shared that link with me, in fact. If taxation without consent is not robbery, then any band of robbers have only to declare themselves a government, and all their robberies are legalized. The Sanders Spooner said that. We will come back, and Chuk Lee will join us, and we'll talk about off-the-grid solar right here on Toward Anarchy.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Well, let's see. Go to towardanarchy.com. I went and grabbed my drink. It's nice and cold now. Get my cigar lit. Chuck's joining us. Chuck is a new digital friend, new real-world friend, after having had an actual conversation with the man where we heard each other's voices and thoughts and expressed some things, and you got to hear that conversation here. If you jump back in the archive at towardanarchy.com or any of the places that you're listening, it should be there. I think it was just end of May or something. It wasn't that long ago. It may not even have been that long ago as that were. But the last time he was here, we talked about technology just in general and what he does with computers and things like that. And I found him to be interesting and well-spoken man on a great array of topics, but on the technology, this is a big thing for me, and just kind of being able to understand the importance of where technology is, and then our own, even just on a rudimentary level, just enough, and so it's great to be able to find somebody that's those are kind of the basic things that you need to do, and find more and more of those people every day. And so it was real cool to meet Chuck, and he also has had some experience with off the grid solar, and so we didn't get a chance to talk about that, and so we wanted to bring him back and have him jump into this conversation. So I think it'd be really cool to chat with Chuck again. Hey Chuck, how you doing, man?
Well, it is a lovely, mostly cloudy day here in Southwest Ohio. We're putting out about 1,000 watts right now.
Oh, that's all right. That's I mean, how much wattage do you need to run?
That is the biggest question that I get asked next to how much does it cost?
Sure.
And it's kind of a question that has to be answered backwards. The first thing you do, like you said, is how many watts do you need? That's what we call a need assessment. And if you are if you're considering going off grid, which by the way ties right into your definition of anarchy, which is self-sufficiency. You push that really hard, and this is one of the best ways to be self-sufficient. There's a level of responsibility that comes with it that until you have your own off-grid system, I can't really explain. It's kind of, if you've ever been an employee somewhere and then you get promoted to manager, you can't really articulate what it feels like, but there's a certain level of power, there's a certain level of control, and with that comes responsibility. And to me, that is a really, really good feeling, to be knowing that I'm in control of my power, I'm responsible for it, I have to maintain it, and knowing also that the power company can't just shut off my power on a whim like they're doing in California right now. Can't happen. I can't be spied on. Nobody can be looking and saying, aha, he just flipped on his toaster. Let's see how long he keeps that on. So responsibility equals anarchy.
I like that.
Yeah, the need assessment. What I tell people is look at your electric bill and see how many kilowatt hours you're using. That's just a start. That is nowhere near the end. The next thing you would do is you go grab a kilowatt meter, KILL-A-watt. You can get these literally anywhere. Walmart has them, Lowe's, Home Depot, wherever. And what you do next is you do an instant and a 24-hour audit of your entire home. Say, like my cell phone. My new one takes 25 watts to charge. My old one took 4. And, yeah, so, 4 watts times about 3 hours to charge. That's 12 watt hours versus my 25 watt that takes, half an hour pretty much to get it up to where it is. Same amount of electricity usage, but at a different rate. Things like you'd be surprised what uses power and what doesn't. Your appliances, how often are they on? And then you'll be horribly shocked at how much electricity you're using. And then you have to kind of rethink, what are you, how to use electricity? How can you, how can you use less? That's because it's usually a shocking experience to see what you use and what uses the power. One of our biggest things is anytime you use electricity to create heat, you're just gobbling up power. And that is the difference between the on-grid people using solar just to knock their bill down, or the off-grid people who are trying to be self-sufficient. We replace all of our heat-producing appliances with gas, like propane or wood or kerosene, whatever else. And old appliances are one of our biggest enemies, actually. That older TV you have in the living room, you can save a ton of money just by replacing it. You can even pay for itself just by replacing it. And once you're there, you're ready to start. You reassess what your need is, and then you're ready to build your system.
Yeah, well, okay, that makes sense. Start with what you need, and then you get. Where do you even go to pick up the stuff? I know I've done a little bit. I built a portable solar unit, but I live in a city in a house that I don't own, so none of these things really apply to me until I go out to my own place where I can do these things. But there are a lot of people that can. I thought it was easy. I just went online and I shopped and found the solar panels that I wanted, the battery storage, the switch that I needed, and built the little system. Is it just that simple, but bigger?
Well, the first thing you need is a lot of guidance, and that's where I offer to people no charge. Find me on Facebook, CHUK space LEE. I'm probably the only one on there, and just say, hey, what do I got to do? It depends. If you are building a larger system, you're going to be getting different parts than if you're building a small portable system, like for camping. And there's so much diversity in the off-grid solar world. The main components are the inverter that turns the power that's coming from the batteries into house power. And you need one that's big enough not only to run what you have, but also anything with an electrical motor that is an induction motor, like you find in your refrigerator, for example. You need to be sized for that. My refrigerator only takes 100 watts, and this is Sears' cheapest model. It really is. It was only $400, and it happens to be one of the most efficient ones they have. No bells and whistles.
Right.
Great price. And it takes 100 watts to run, but 1,350 to start.
Ouch.
So you really have to size that inverter for, hey, what am I trying to run off of this system? The next thing is your battery bank, and you want to size that for about 3 days of electrical need. In my case, I have a 920 amp hour battery running at 24 volts, which gives me about 11,000 something watts in reserve. So, and my house, I like to tell people, your house is your house, mine is mine. It just depends on exactly what you're trying to run, but that's what mine runs. The next thing you need is a charge controller, something to get the electricity from the panels into the batteries and manage those batteries. As you know, like when you plug in your cell phone, you'll watch it rocket up to 80%, and then it just slows down to a trickle after that, and that 80 to 100% charge takes about as long as the 0 to 80. And that's the charge controller in your phone. And that's no different than the charge controller that runs my batteries. And then the next thing is the wire that goes to solar panels, and there is a solar panel wire out there that's got a really huge casing around it and can withstand UV light, which is really important. And that runs into a little box that combines all my solar panels. And that's pretty much the entire system. There's only a few major components. Today, we are having we've gone from, since we started talking, from mostly cloudy to overcast, and my wattage is down to about 300 to 400 watts right now. Not much. Were I to have completely overcast days, just 3 or 4 in a row, couple winters ago, we had 17 days overcast with no power production. So we get a charger, and we hook that up to a generator. Run the generator a few hours a day, charge up your batteries, you're good to go.
And that's worst. That's literally sort of worst case scenario when there's no sunlight for days and days and days. That's how you said 17 days, half a month. Yeah,
that was it. Yeah, it was dark from I think it was middle of December, a couple of years ago, to at the end of the first week in January is finally when we got some sunlight. And yeah, every house should have a generator anyway. It's a backup. I like to have backups of everything in my life. It creates less chaos, which is no fun at all.
Well, if you become dependent on some things, and a lot of people are definitely dependent on electricity. I mean, pretty much all of us are. We all have something going on that we have electricity, even if it's just enough to start the mobile home to get going again.
Well, my world, of course, in technology, we do that. That's all we do is electricity, and
sure,
yeah, it's kind of a cool thing to tell the customer, hey, your laptop was charged off of free energy, so to speak. That's the cool thing. Not having the electric bill will essentially buys me a cheap car once a year.
Right. You do that?
And,
are you one of those guys? It doesn't surprise me at all to where you buy cheap cars and just drive them until they're dead. Because that's what I do. That's what I do.
Oh, well, I was trying to do that, and every time this was right after everybody got their $1,200 that was manufactured out of thin air, and the week that everybody got those checks is when my last cheap car died, and I was devastated because everywhere I went, people were buying up the cheap cars. I ended up buying a really, really expensive, at least to me, car. And then a week later, a friend of mine says, "Hey, I have a Hyundai for sale," and I said, "Well, I'll take that too because I need a daily driver."
Yeah, let's see. Of the two that we have right now, the one I bought for $1,200 6 years ago, and that was hard to do 6 years ago because it hadn't been that long since the car buyback. The car buyback really screwed the secondary market for cars, really destroyed a lot of viable secondary market vehicles when they did that. I think that was the plan. I think that's why they did that on purpose, was to bring in get rid of those cheap cars, and basically people would only have newer and new cars to choose from. 1,200 6 years ago, so it's running pretty good. I mean, I put a little bit of work into it here and there, but I've always bought that way. The other vehicle that we're driving right now, we actually were given. We got it for free, and it's nice. Wow. Yeah, well, it's a PT Cruiser, so it's not that nice. They're really pieces of junk, terribly built vehicles. But I got it for free. I can't complain about it. It wasn't really free. I mean, I worked for it, but they did give it to us. I wasn't expecting it. They showed up one day and said, here's a car for you. And yeah, well, I had just one that I'd had for a number of years that I had actually bought and rebought. It was that great of a used car. I had owned it, got rid of it, and then bought it back. But then it finally died, and I wasn't interested in fixing it anymore. It's a Mitsubishi Montero, and one of the things, they're hard to get parts for. They're great vehicles, all metal.
They definitely are.
Yeah, wonderful. I really enjoyed the vehicle. I wish I would have had the bigger engine. I wish parts weren't as hard to come by. But I finally gave up on it. It was still drivable. You could still use it if you wanted to put a couple $100 into it. You could, but I was just done with it, and that was known that I was done with it. And it had sat there for a while, and then all of a sudden they showed up with it. And so what was cool about that is I actually was able to take that. The Montero and fix it up a little bit, and I gave it to my oldest daughter, and her boyfriend. And they drove it for a couple of years. I guess he's a husband now.
Did it have the 2.6 liter engine?
It had the smallest of the engines. I don't know if it was 2.4. It was small. It was the smallest of the engines. Yeah, it was not. It was definitely not the 6-cylinder. They offered a 6-cylinder model.
Right.
Yeah. We're gonna go into a break, and because I'm on Skype, it'll be all wonky with us. So we'll run into a break. We'll come back and we'll talk with Chuk Lee. We're talking about off-the-grid solar right here on Toward Anarchy. TowardAnarchy.com, that's the place to follow along. October 11th is what you're looking for. Chuk Lee is my guest, and we're talking about off-the-grid solar and used cars. I loved my Mitsubishi Montero. The four-wheel drive in that thing was amazing. I owned it when I was in Colorado, and there was a couple of instances. My wife worked in Genesee, and that's just enough up the mountains that if you had to go every day and you didn't want to go on the highway because it is right off I-70, you could take some side roads up the mountain, and you could find yourself in pretty quick 2 feet of snow pretty easily, and it would just eat right through it, no problem, even with the smaller engine, whatever size it was. I know it was just the smallest one they had, and it was automatic too, which always kind of annoyed me. Automatic's just not, it doesn't give you the same control over it that having the standard does. But I loved my little Montero. They finally killed it off. My daughter and her husband. Well, it died on him. Whatever. It was inevitable. It was old. It was beat up. Did I lose Chuck? No, there you are.
No, I
didn't hear you.
No, one of the more exciting things out there are the electric cars, and where that can come into your solar. A small solar house will not power up one of those cars at all. However, you can make money off of that if you buy enough panels, and you can charge people, $10 to power up, and you can make money off of that.
That's kind of cool. I've seen some of the electric pumps out at the, like the Tesla pumps. I've seen some of those around town. There's a couple of those here. We're a small enough town that there's not a lot of Teslas around. I think I've seen one in town.
We have them everywhere, and I'm out in the middle of nowhere, and I've got 2 of them about 5 miles away, and they're ubiquitous now. I think it's really cool. The electric car is definitely going to replace the internal combustion engine.
Oh yeah.
And speaking of, and that's what my education is in engines, car engines. So.
Oh, is that right?
One of the ways that you'll never make money, by the way, one of my biggest questions is, can I make money by selling electricity back to the electric company?
Right.
And the answer is no. There are some states, I know Kentucky's one of them, but this is the last year, I believe, where you can sell electricity to the electric company for the same price you pay for it. But typically, what they do is they pay you about a third of what they're charging for the electricity itself. which...
Oh, yeah. Well, isn't that that's what all of these things are for, is so they can all line their own pockets with about 70% of our money. We got to go into the top of the hour. We'll take a quick break, and we'll come back and we'll talk some more with Chuk Lee about off-the-grid solar right here on Toward Anarchy.
You're listening to Republic Broadcasting Network, because you can handle the truth.
We are living in an artificially induced state of consciousness that resembles sleep. The poor and the underclass are growing. Racial justice and human rights are non-existent. We have been lulled into a trance. They have made us indifferent to ourselves, to others. We are focused only on our own gain. That is their primary method of survival. Keep us asleep, keep us selfish, keep us sedated.
You're listening to Toward Anarchy on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Here's your host, Michael Storm.
Looking at numbers as we go off into hour number 2 here, I'm looking at these numbers for the amount of sunshine, daily sunshine on a south-facing roof, say in the 24-degree north latitude or the 32-degree north latitude, that's the kind of thing that you're going to figure out just by your need, right? I mean, whether or not you can even realistically expect to meet it where you're at, because depending on how far you are away from the equator, you're going to get less and less days, and that's where having the ability to store a bunch of energy that you create is going to be important. Having the right battery sizes, a lot of questions to consider when building. How long have you been running your system?
It's I've been running. It constantly evolves. I even bought a new generator this last week to replace a smaller one, but it constantly evolves. So I've been doing this since about 2011. I haven't paid an electric bill since 2011. I have no relationship with the electric company whatsoever here. Something that you said, roof, and the answer to that is no. You don't want these on your roof for so many reasons. If you are, the only scenario where that would be acceptable is if you are near the equator, where you don't need to tilt your panels, where you have access to those panels to clean them, then maybe that's a good idea. And your roof is new, of course.
That's a big failure of a lot of people that have invested in it in the modern era, is that they have just put panels up on their roof that they really don't have access to, that they can't clean, that they can't repair because they don't even know anything about them because they didn't put them in themselves.
That's the other thing. I mean, if you're there's two ways to do solar. One is the call up a company. They're going to ask you what your electric bill is, and they're going to come out and spend. You're going to spend between $30,000 and $40,000 for this, and they'll tell you, it'll pay itself back in X amount of months, which is true. It'll pay itself off in, say, 5 years or so. But the real thing is, there's a lot better ways to use energy in your house. Like mine have all these LED bulbs, for example. I have pretty much I run fans until it's hot enough to where I have to turn on the air conditioning. But that's, learn how to use power a little bit more wisely. Yes, I have, I use gaming computers, but I don't just leave them running 24/7. When I'm gaming, I'm gaming. When I'm not, I'm not. But I'm in Ohio, which has, and you're way far north, and when you live in an area that's not near the equator, the sun's angle is going to tilt, with the azimuth is going to change, and it gets really severe. In the wintertime here, our panels are angled about 16 degrees from vertical. I mean, they're almost facing flat up. almost straight up. If you see any of the off-grid Alaska shows, you'll see their panels are vertical because that's how they have to catch the sun.
Sure.
And then, and yes, you can have solar in Alaska even. I mean, it's certainly you have a generator for your winter months, but in your winter months, you can run solar. Whereas in June here, like on June 21st, which is, the summer solstice, of course, the panels are laying 14 degrees from the ground. So, I mean, it's that severe. It's almost it's a huge change. So every couple months, we'll go out there and change the angle of the panels to make it, produce more power. And we're in Ohio. It snows here, not often, but it does. And when it snows, if you have a bunch of panels sitting up on your roof, the next question is, hey, when's it going to thaw? And you have no idea. In the wintertime, it may take months.
Yeah.
Whereas, we can just walk out and just sweep them off. So I'm a big fan of the rack system, where you just stick them on a rack. I built my own racks. You can build them out of wood, metal, anything you want. And you just want to make them adjustable so that they face, right at the sun. And you move them every couple months, and that fixes it.
Interesting. Yeah, it makes sense. It was always funny to me. It was always obvious that most of the people that were putting solar on their homes weren't really thinking about it. They were just thinking about that, I can get that bonus from the electric company. They weren't really thinking about their usage and about their need. They were just following a fad and a trend.
Well, and something else about economics. The government has been giving people these tax credits for putting solar on their house. And the end result of that has been the solar companies have been gobbling up those credits. You don't get them as a consumer. That's just jacked the price of the solar panels up. So what they tell you is, okay, this is going to cost you $28,000, but you get a tax credit. And that'll make it, $23,000 this year, and then just think of all the money you'll make selling it back to the electric company. Most people are not aware that there are several parts to their bill. One of the things that is a part of your bill is the delivery charge, which you think I'm using X kilowatt hours, and that should cost this much. It does, but then they tack on a delivery charge and innumerable fees and taxes and everything else. And, I believe I'm a pretty well-educated person, but electric bills confuse me. And if they're confusing me, I'm worried. That's not good.
Yeah, it's like trying to read Greek, as they say, I guess. I don't even look at my bills. I just pay them, and I think that's probably what most people do. They just assume. I'll go and look at the options that my Evergy, that's who handles mine. I'll go and look at their options on the website, and they have things where I can try to maximize my savings by distributing my usage, so I get a more like a flat bill every month based on a guesstimate of how much I'm going to use during a certain month. And if I exceed it, I guess the penalty is ridiculous. I don't know. It never looked like a good deal to me.
No, it's so complicated, and that was the other thing I like is I don't have to deal with that anymore. It's a wonderful feeling. I don't get a bill and look at it. And also, it makes a very visceral connection between what is running in your house and the usage, because on an off-grid system, on an on-grid system or on a no-grid, a no solar system, you turn this on and you don't really know what it uses, and your electric bill goes up, and you're like, looks like the bill's a little high this month, and you pay it, and that's it. And it's it creates a total disconnect between the user and the electricity in the house. Yeah. And while that's not necessarily a bad thing, I guess the biggest thing to me is the frailty of the system. Yeah. I live on a street that's known for racing, and last year had a car plow itself right into the phone pole, electric pole, right in front of my house. And that kind of stuff can knock your power out, and suddenly you're helpless. It's a horrible feeling, and it's one that I don't ever have to worry about again.
Well, you talk about bringing the disconnect. It is a bad thing. It's a bad thing for people to be disconnected from the results of their actions. That's part of the problem that we have with waste in general, whether it's wasted water, wasted electricity, any of these notions of wasting the things that we use, is that we're disconnected from how much of them we use and the importance of how hard it is to actually round these things up and bring them together. And just building the solar it should create a new bond and a new understanding between an individual and their reality and their earth, the solar system that they live in. They're actually using that solar energy as part of their life and counting on it. I would think that there's, without being too hippy-dippy, it brings you a little bit back to nature,
I get, that's one of the, speaking of hippy-dippy, one of the things that gets me into conversations about anarchy with people is that, I tell people, I live in an off-grid house, and, it's just a regular house. There's nothing, it's not a tiny home. It's not an extravagant home. It's just your generic little house. And, it's just makes its own power. And the people are like, wow, that's so cool. The liberals I speak to really love that idea, and that'll get me into a conversation. They'll immediately go to politics after that, and I say, well, I like my politics kind of like I like my electricity. I like to be in charge of them, and that makes them think.
That's great. It's nice that it's a perfect example to even talk about, because you don't have to start using words that scare people. You can just talk about, I control my own electricity. I am master of my own juice.
Yeah, that gets it started, and they think, they identify with that and they like it. Like, wow, that's really cool. And I'm like, yeah, it really is cool. And and there's some politicians out there, like in Florida, trying to screw it up by mandating that you have to be on the grid. And one of the biggest questions I get asked is, isn't that illegal?
Huh.
And I'm like, well, first of all, no, but what kind of world do we live in where it is illegal, like Florida? I have a friend that lives down there who, when he said, oh, I got solar on my house, and I said, off-grid or on-grid? Oh, you have to be on the grid in Florida. And my response was, you need to be able to be off-grid just in case something happens. And this is right before that hurricane came and just wiped everything out. And even his solar installer and I got into an argument. He's like, well, the longest time anybody in Florida is out of power is 3 days. I'm like, hurricanes? Like, have you noticed them? And they're right after that conversation, the hurricane comes, it wipes him out he's offline for 3 days. And I said, so we thinking about a battery bank now, maybe, possibly? Because one of the things that most people who are on grid don't know is that if the electricity goes down, they turn your solar panels off too. And they do that so that you're not feeding electricity into the grid when they think the lines are dead.
Yeah.
So it's a safety thing for them, but it ultimately turns out to be a very authoritarian tool to shut off your electricity. If the electricity's out, you're in California, and you're mandated to have solar panels, well, they shut off your power. They're shutting off your solar panels, too. So, to me, that's kind of terrifying.
That's not freedom in any sense. I mean, let's be serious. If you have to do anything, if you have to participate in anything, there's a lack of freedom at the basic understanding of the word "have to," because if we're talking about politics, if we're talking about laws, then that means that somewhere somebody has to enforce it, right? And when you enforce a law, the bottom underlying thought is that if you ignore that law long enough, if you ignore the enforcement of that law long enough, eventually somebody will kill you over it.
Yes.
That's scary. And over just my own electricity.
Yes. They'll do that.
I wonder...
That is, unfortunately, it's becoming part of the American psyche that,
right.
That there's somebody once told me a long, long time ago the difference between American law and British law. American law tells you what you can do. Here, you have these rights. British law tells you has a big list of what you can't do. And people are very obsessed over there with what you can't do. If you recall the Monty Python skit Fish License, where the guy demands a license for his pet fish because you need one for a dog or whatever else, or a cat or whatever else you have there. People ask me all about the solar stuff. Do you need this license or that? It's like, well, definitely have an electrician check your stuff out. That's just wisdom. But otherwise, you can pretty much set up. And, there are cities that require permits. I live way out in the country, so I don't really have that issue. But there are, it's right now, pretty much set it up and go.
I imagine that in my city, where you can light your backyard on fire anytime you want, you probably can't just put up solar and tap into your home anytime you want. That would be my guess.
Well, I definitely wouldn't bring in any attention to myself by asking directly. I would definitely do a third-party way of finding out, maybe internet or have somebody else go down and ask. I try to stay avoidant of government as much as possible.
That's it. Yeah, right. That's the best way to handle these things. What are they? What is this saying about? I can't think of it. Something about doing it now and paying for it later. I don't know.
Yeah, always better to do something and get caught than to ask permission first.
Yeah, go ahead and be wrong in making the decision that you made, and have to be told no. And just any of these ideas of just sort of. I look at it as thinking for yourself and doing the thing that's smart and right, and when you don't violate somebody else, to me, that's all I'm not intruding on my neighbor's property by putting up solar panels on my property. I don't see any way that happens. There's not. Maybe I don't know if I tried to build it up and over his house and over his property, maybe. But I just don't see how putting some solar panels in my own backyard or something like that should be of anybody's concern. But we know that's not the truth. We know that's reality is that they do. I mean, they come and they tell you. I was just talking about it earlier in the show about how they come in and tell you what plants you can plant and exactly where you can plant them. We got to go into a break, and then we'll come back and we'll wrap it up here with Chuk Lee on Toward Anarchy. We are back, and as always, we have to wrap this thing up. It comes to a close. It just does. My guest, Chuk Lee, been hanging out with us talking about off-the-grid solar. If you go to towardanarchy.com, if you look for October 11th, I shared the links to his skunkerific repair, computer sales, repair, upgrades, all the things that they do. And, of course, it's on the Facebook as well as on the web. And you can find Chuk that way, just trace him down that way if you want to talk to him some more about this solar stuff. Any last thoughts on it? Anything of it that we didn't actually hit on that we should, though?
Yes. Okay. The biggest resource that I've used, you asked earlier, where do I get started? You can ask me. I have the experience. Also, I got a lot of information from a website called solarpaneltalk.com, and there is about halfway down the page, it talks about off-grid solar panel systems. A lot of really good information on there, but these people that are dispensing the information are very burned out by people who have done before they've researched. Uh-huh. And the biggest thing I can warn anybody about on off-grid solar is research first, do second, and listen to what people tell you. There are all kinds of things out there designed to take your money for cheap. And, you say, oh, this looks like a really good deal. Hey, I saw the solar panel at Harbor Freight. What do you think? Well, I think it's got a life of 5 years. It puts out a third the power it says it puts out. And it's a piece of junk. Don't buy it. For another $50, you can get a quality panel that actually puts it out, what it says it is, and lasts 25 years. So definitely check that out if you like, or just contact me either way.
Well, that's just a lesson that everybody should learn, is that you're shopping, and you should always be shopping. You shouldn't just assume that that if it's right there, if it's in reach, that it has a brand name, whatever it is, you shouldn't just assume that that's okay. That'll be the way to go. You really should do your research. And when you're talking about something like this, we're talking about a sizable investment. I mean, what's the average panel cost of any decent quality? That your own person.
Mine are 300-watt panels, and I paid $200 a piece for them. I have 9 of them. So there's $1,800 in the panels there. My batteries cost me a little bit over $1,200. My charge controller was $600. The wire was $200. And the inverter was only $300, and that was one of the places where you can save money by buying an inexpensive model from China. There's places you can save money, and there's places you can't. I didn't spare a penny on my wire. That's where I definitely didn't skimp.
Yeah, the transmission part right there. The difference in the inverters is there's a couple of different types, right? And some are better for different types of energy applications. Is that true? Yeah,
the square sine wave, the cheap stuff that you'll find at Harbor Freight or whatever, those have square sine waves that come out of them, and they'll run things like computers or stuff like electronics just fine, but they will not run your refrigerator. It'll burn out your motor. So you need a pure sine wave, which drastically jacks up the price. So, don't get a cheap. You can get them from China, get them at less money, but you don't want to get a cheap square wave one at all.
And that's good. I'm glad that you clarified that, because that is a big importance. And if people don't understand that, they'll be thinking, oh, well, I have to run my computer, I have to run my laptop, I have to be able to charge my phone to stay in touch with people, and forget about the refrigerator and realize that it just doesn't run the same way.
Yeah, it won't run an induction motor. Like, you can't vacuum your house with that. It just won't work.
Very good piece of information to have, and I think that the best piece of information is do that shopping. It really is. Go out and understand what your needs are, and then compare what's out there to your needs. It's really not. It sounds so basic, but I think that so many people just don't do it. I think they just pick up the phone book, and I know that used to be the way things are done, and you just grab the phone book, and the first guy with the AAA in his name was able to get at the top, and you called him because he was the best, right?
Quality, at least in the technology world, and I, that isn't always the case for solar, but in the technology world, the amount of advertising spent on the item is inversely proportional to the quality almost every time. I mean, almost without exception. In solar, there are some standards out there that just don't need advertising. There's charger brands out there that they don't advertise. There are little tiny companies out there, and they just make the best, and that's what I buy. Always buy the quality. Always err on the side of quality.
Yeah, that's right. Even if you have to spend a little bit more, you're probably best to err on the side of quality. That's good advice. Unfortunately, I think that the music's going to kick in any second here, and we'll be chased off, and we'll have to let you go. But it's been great talking to you again. I really enjoy your conversation. What's your TikTok? You started a new TikTok. You're doing some short liberty stuff.
It's CHUX Trash Bin.
Chuck's Trash Bin. I love it.
And
Thank you so
what
much,
I do,
brother.
what I do on TikTok is I ask questions. And most of them revolve around definitions. The last one I said, what is a protest? And for those of us who know, it's an appeal to authority.
Yes, it is.
But what is government?
We got to go into the break, unfortunately. Stick around for a minute and come back with me.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Okay, so hopefully Chuck stayed with me here for just a minute because I wanted him to. Okay, cool. I wanted you to go ahead and complete that thought because I think it's important. It goes along with everything that I'm talking about in relation to what's going on out on the streets right now and the way things have changed in America over the last few months. This notion of protesting and the fact that it's an appeal to authority. That's what you were starting to say.
Exactly. It's whether you're protesting, say you have an employer that's paying you a bad wage, and your union gets together and says, "Hey, we're gonna picket outside the front of the business," or it's a government that's doing horrible things like murdering people, and you have a bunch of people coming outside, the governmental building to protest. Either is an appeal to authority. It's saying to that authority, hey, we don't like what you're doing, and we're hopping mad. And what I'm seeing right now is people are protesting. We have a cop who goes and murders somebody in cold blood, and then they burn down AutoZone, which confuses me. The cop never gets harmed for his actions. Or they'll try to burn down the police station, which is just replaced with a much nicer and more secure one at the taxpayer expense. I don't quite understand. An employer protest, I understand that. You're probably going to get somewhere with that. You can go to another employer, but you can't go to another government. So there's absolutely no incentive for that government to change, anything.
Well, if our participatory government were so participation-based, we wouldn't have to protest on the street. There wouldn't be a disenfranchised group. But that's just that's the lie of the idea of participation in government in general. The idea that you can somehow magically do things that you couldn't otherwise do as an individual, wouldn't otherwise do as an individual of any sort of principle or moral, and somehow turn that into volume after volume of dictates and social organizations and manipulations of reality that ultimately whoever happens to be in the political class at that time can use to rob, cage, murder the rest of us.
Exactly. And I don't think, telling them, hey, I'm hopping mad, and we're not going to take it anymore, and we're going to hold signs. If you don't do what we're going to say, we're going to hold signs out in front of your building. To me, that's not much of a persuader. I read somewhere, and I wish I could cite it, but politicians, if you don't agree with them, their chance of changing their views is about 3% with a 3% margin of error. I don't remember where I read that, but
sounds
that's
right.
Apparently, yeah, it does. That's apparently what they're going to do. If you don't like it, okay, great. We're just going to keep doing what we're doing. Shut up and pay your taxes. Like, good boy.
Yeah, that sounds right. Chuck, give your TikTok again.
It's CHUX Trash Bin.
Chuck's Trash Bin. At the TikTok, there you go. All right, yeah, I had somebody ask specifically. So, all right, brother, I appreciate you coming. I'll let you get on with the rest of your day. I'm gonna sit here and talk to myself for a little bit too. I got a couple more things to go over. I appreciate it, man. I will. I'll catch up with you a little bit later, and I'll let you know when the archive is out there.
Awesome. I'll see you online.
All right, take care, Chuck. What a great conversation, as always. That's what I like to do. But Chuck's been really fun in that respect. I like him. He's a neat guy. He's my type of guy, and I'm not a guy's guy. guys are usually, they like pick on you like older brothers, kind of guys and muscle cars and always trying to one up, sort of knowledge of the football teams and things like that. All those things are fine. I don't have a problem with any of that stuff, but it's just nice to hear a guy who's he is who he is, and he seems to be someone that you can take at face value when he says something, and you can assume that he means it, and that it means something to him, or it wouldn't just come out of his mouth. And I think that's really important when we're talking about these principled ideas. As always, I have something going on in the background. It's just the background noise. You can't hear it. I don't have it running with the volume, but I just grabbed. I was really short of time. I forgot to pull my drink out. It just wasn't cold enough yet. All that, including throwing something on just on the screen in the background. And it didn't happen to be South Park. It's one of the few things that I have multiple sets of multiple discs of on Blu-ray, so that I can just randomly grab one. And that's what I did. I just opened up one of the box sets, grabbed one of the discs, and threw it in. And the first episode on it happened to be the episode about Napster and about Metallica and the IP thing. And the conversation of IP came up again for me again this week, and we've never really resolved it here. I know that there are listeners who think that I am wrong, that I shouldn't be able to use Metallica's music or something like that, like I do for the intro, that I should pay them to be able to do that, let alone being able to download music or things, different files, stuff like that. And I don't know if I've been real clear about this, but it should be real clear for the principled individual, whatever you call yourself, if you're principled in this understanding of the law and what it is to steal something from somebody. Copying something digitally is not theft. Breaking into a server to take that unreleased information and release it, that would be theft. I don't care if it's digital or otherwise. You have to break into somebody's property to take what exists and put it out there. That's theft. That's theft. And if you can just copy a file and it's not taking that file away from somebody, and that you're not selling that file, there's no theft there. Now, listen, because I can already hear the screaming and the screeching from some of the artists back there. I'm on your side as well, and this is your fault for not understanding technology and getting behind it and realizing the use it is to you. First, anybody that cares about your music is going to want to share it with other people, and you should be grateful for that. You should want people to enjoy your work, especially in this time where the record companies aren't as important as they used to be. If you want a particular set of accolades, then you have to get there somewhere along the way. But the reality is that if you want to make music and put it out there and get people to pay you for it, they will do so. All you have to do is get it to them, and they will eventually pay you for it. The people who will download it and not pay you for it, we're never going to pay you for it in the first place. So there's no loss of money. Now here's where there's a line, where I'm going to draw a line. Me and my buddies sharing some music with each other, not a crime. Somebody posting the music of someone else on their website, distributing it freely, not a crime. Charging people, I don't care if you took it and put it on a disc or anything, you cannot take an artist's work and resell it. That's where the line has to be. Because, okay, look, if you're just copying a song and sharing a song with somebody, there's no money exchanged, then there's no damage to the artist. Right? A crime, a violation of someone's personal property actually has to have demonstrable damages. Well, there's no way to prove that there's any damage to you by your art being shared out in the world. But if somebody takes your art, takes your music, and puts it online or puts it on discs and sells them, that's theft, because you can point at your piece of work and you can go, this person that I did not give permission to use me, because you wouldn't have that work. It would be the equivalent of you taking me and forcing me to record an album for you so that you can make money on it. You can't do that. You can't take somebody else's work and sell that and make money off of it, because that right there presents demonstrable damages. You took my actual work that you could not otherwise have. It's not the same as a physical product in the real world. If somebody takes an Xbox, they buy one at the store and they pull it all apart and they plug it into their computer and they figure out how it's all made and all this, and they take their own tools and their own money and their own capital and they build a similar item. That's not the same thing. Your product is already out there in the market. So copying is not theft. It's not taking from you. The person who would buy it from them isn't going to buy it from you in the first place. For whatever reason it is, they can't afford it, or they're just an unscrupulous individual who won't pay you for your I don't know what I've never understood the logic behind hating copying of your product if your product is better. It's a basic economic thing. And so when you take your economics and you take your natural common law, where I didn't actually take anything from you, you can't show that I took something from you. In fact, I could argue that I've done you a favor by sharing your work out there. And if I could go out there and ask every single one of those people, I haven't done this. I don't do file sharing. Even if I did, I would say I didn't. They know, they watch. I don't, so they know I don't. If I could go out there and ask every single one of those people if they went and spent money and bought an actual album from you or downloaded your songs from one of the reputable downloading places, or if they just went and listened to it for free on YouTube and you didn't make a dime. I don't know. That definitely happens. This IP question, it should be real simple. with that music thing, there's an obvious line for me, and there's people that say IP doesn't exist. Whatever, okay, fine. You argue the semantics. I'm going to argue about the actual action. Whoa, what a novel idea. This is not just the thought process of the individual. This is why we have an actor in the law. This is the basis of law is action and the reason for action. If the reason for you taking my work as an artist is to copy my work and sell it for you to profit, and I didn't give you permission to do that, there's no question that any money you make is at least some percentage of it mine, due to me. It's mine, no matter what. Because I did not invite you, and that's the bottom line of you owning anything you create, because you couldn't still have it. The digital thing makes it a little bit different, but that's the line. If you're trying to figure it out, that's the line. That's where it is. Be happy for people using your music in their work and sharing it across. And if they make some money on it and they are able to kick some to you, be grateful for it. Be glad. But I hope they give you some credit. Hopefully they talk about there's just so many more things. This has been in question for too long. This is the reason why this has been a question. And a lot of artists, by default, they end up falling back on what their record company decides for them. And that's what happened to Metallica and these other people when it came to the Napster thing. The same people that would come out and tell you about how they've been screwed over by record companies and record deals and this, that, and the other thing all through the years, and if you don't do it right, and if you don't own your work, and they just all the warnings about getting involved in the industry, and the first thing they do is get in line behind the people who were actually getting cut out of the money when it comes to sharing, and that's the middleman, the distributors. The people that you don't need to produce your art. And if they take it without your permission, just like a record company, if a record company took it without your permission and produced an album, you would, any reasonable person would use what litigation ability there is, what theft laws there are to protect their property. And if they have to come down to it, I don't see a problem with putting a bullet in somebody who's stealing your work from you and profiting from it and not cutting you in on it. That's a pretty tough thing to say, but we're talking about, again, natural law or consequences for your actions when involving other people and their property, regardless of whether you believe in their property or not. That's not the point. And I just don't know how to make this clear to people. But if it's not yours, it's not yours. It's not your property. You have no say over it, none of it, not even the public property. Again, a small percentage of it, if you own it, if we go down that road of your entitlement to something that is public. Yes, it is Chuk's Trash Bin, CHUXTRASHBIN, Chuk's Trash Bin on TikTok. Yeah, a couple people asked about that. That's really cool. So hopefully Chuk picks up a couple of new viewers on his. It's interesting the way TikTok works. I'm going to try to take advantage of it. I don't have a lot of time left. I wanted to hit a couple of these other things. This October 11th is what you're looking for. I wanted to look at the 100 best rock albums of all time. And I just wanted to know what they came up with. And I hadn't looked at it yet, so we're looking at it together now. Number 100, the Futureheads. Never heard of them. All right, let's skip way ahead. Don't know who the Futureheads are. Never heard of them. Here's something. Z, My Morning Jacket, number 25. I'm only familiar with them from them being on American Dad. There was a whole episode about My Morning Jacket on American Dad that was hilarious. We'll do the top 10 when we come back, and we'll wrap it up here on Toward Anarchy. Oh, there's a great album. TowardAnarchy.com, and you'll see right there on the front page, not in any particular order, Jason Bassler coming up next week on the show. Matthew Wojtecki, author of Brushfire. I just have one more copy of the book to give away. That's why I didn't give away one this week. We'll wait until Matthew's here. We'll give it away. And then Ram Dennison will be on the show, as well as Bradley Thomas coming back on the show. But Jason Bassler next week. And so I just got to the top top 10, and Led Zeppelin 2 is there. Fantastic. Of course, John Bonham, one of the great drummers of all time, Jimmy Page and Robert Plant and John Paul Jones, just amazing artists. Let's see. Sergei Gainsbourg, I don't know it off the top of my head. Number 8, Electric Ladyland, Jimi Hendrix. That's great. Led Zeppelin, the first album, number 7. Brian Wilson Presents Smile by Brian Wilson. Okay, maybe. Houses of Holy by Led Zeppelin, number 5. Number 4, Led Zeppelin 3 by Led Zeppelin. Look, you guys are just pushing. I'm calling BS on this. I love Led Zeppelin, but my God. London Calling by The Clash. Well, that's a good album. Wow. Rolling Stones, Exile on Main Street, number 2. Number 1 album, Led Zeppelin 4. Man, that is such a pop version of the history of rock and roll, and for those to be the top 10, I mean, come on. Let's see, Talking Heads, number 13, Achtung Baby, U2, number 14, Pavements, Brighten the Corners by number 15. That's great. That's a good album. That could be higher. Let's see, wow, I'm surprised at some of the stuff how is this stuff even on the list if it's not higher up? Elephant by the White Stripes, Iggy Pop, The Stooges, Raw Power. How is any of this stuff even on if it's not higher on some of this just be higher on the list? This is some great stuff. In Utero, Nirvana at 23, Arcade Fire's Funeral at 22, Primal Scream. Wow, there's My Morning Jacket again. Bob Dylan, Modern Times, number 27. Interesting. Great albums. Another Nirvana. Which one? Where'd he go? I just saw The Hair. Nevermind at number 29. There's some amazing. I don't know how you put any of this stuff in order, people. I just always say, oh yeah, that's one of my top favorites, and I just never give. I couldn't tell you what number 1 is because you could run 1,000 different bands in front of my ears, and I'd be like, oh yeah, that's amazing. Super Unknown by Soundgarden at 35. It's all rock albums. They're calling them rock albums, so you won't catch any country or anything like that. There's definitely stuff I've never heard of, and there's other stuff that I'm like, wow, how is that? How did that not get higher on the list? Jason Bassler, Free Thought Project, next weekend on the show. Thanks so much for tuning in. You take care. I'll see you next week on Toward Anarchy.
This is RBN, the Republic Broadcasting Network.